Good morning, everybody. I gotta say that it's okay. All right, got it. I'm going to share my screen and get my slideshow started. So just give me a second. All right, so as Sarah so graciously said, my name is Teresa Geroulo. I am Director of Social Work at Broadmead, and I'm going to talk to you about compassion fatigue today. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
All right. You sound great.
Okay. So I need to do the disclosure. My son just graduated law school, so he reminded me all this fun stuff. So this content represents my opinions. I have no relevant financial relationships to disclose. Any products or services that I mention are because I find them helpful in my work life or my personal life. I receive no financial remuneration for mentioning them. And then this is not on the slide. I have a couple of environmental disclosures. We're in the middle of construction, so right now it's quiet. I pray that there continues to be no construction noise during this time. And also I wear an insulin pump. And of course, this morning, my pump is giving me all kinds of crazy alarms. So I am foreseeing that sometime during this hour, I might need to just look away from the screen and look at my pump, because otherwise it will send a whoop, whoop, whoop alarm if I don't pay attention to it. So it will only take a few seconds. So thank you for that grace. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we will introduce the topic with a moment of silence. I will define compassion versus compassion fatigue. We'll look at the symptoms of compassion fatigue, some strategies to deal with it, and then we'll close with a moment of silence. So Broadmead is a Quaker community, and we try to begin and end our meetings with a moment of silence. At the start of the meeting, it's to prepare ourselves for the task at hand and to center our thoughts. And we end with a moment of silence to reflect on the work and the fellowship that was achieved during the meeting. So let's take a moment of silence now. Thank you. So before we look at compassion fatigue, we need to look at compassion. So compassion is the awareness of suffering. It is a sympathetic concern. We are emotionally moved by suffering. We wish to see relief of suffering, and then we get a response, positive response to the relief of suffering. It's why we got into this work, right? And this is one of my favorite people on earth. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. By the Dalai Lama. Okay, compassion and empathy. Compassion and empathy are interrelated. Empathy recognizes emotion that's experienced by others. You stay out of judgment. You communicate understanding of others' feelings. You do not lose yourself in others' experience, and then you stay out of judgment. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest. Yes, empathy and compassion are related, but the true reason I wanted to bring up empathy was so I could play this cartoon by Brené Brown. I love Dr. Brown. She's wonderful. So I hope you enjoy it. And then I also sometimes have a little bit of technical difficulty. As I practice this slideshow, it's been a little difficult for me sometimes to progress to the next slide. So please have patience with me, and I hope you enjoy this little video.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions very diverse professions where empathy is relevant and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I had it, yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Focus on the pink heart. Again, focus on the pink heart while I try to get to the next slide. Okay, of course. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. So that pink heart just exploded. It went boom. You're having compassion fatigue. Your compassion changed to compassion fatigue. So compassion fatigue is the state of exhaustion and dysfunction biologically, physiologically, and emotionally as a result of prolonged exposure to compassion stress. I'm sorry, of course, the drilling just started. Compassion stress is the natural consequent behavior and emotions resulting from knowledge about a traumatic event experienced by someone else. It is the stress resulting from helping a traumatized or suffering person, also known as secondary trauma. And I borrowed this next slide from Leading Age because they do a great toolkit on trauma-informed care, and they define secondary trauma as the impact on those who work closely with clients who have experienced trauma in which professionals are themselves traumatized by hearing about those experiences and then themselves exhibit post-traumatic stress symptoms. This can occur after a single traumatic incident or over time. And then some terms that overlap with secondary trauma are compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. And then we need to remember that we all have our own trauma histories. We may have our own experiences with primary trauma. So if you are trying to help someone through their suffering and that suffering triggers something in you, you have to work on that. You have to make sure that you don't let that overwhelm you. And if you see puzzling behaviors in your peers or in yourself, it could be due to the compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma. So, symptoms of compassion fatigue: exhaustion, disrupted sleep, anxiety, headaches, stomach ache, irritability, emotional disconnectedness, self-contempt, difficulties with personal relationships, fear, depression, numbness, and decreased sense of purpose. What does compassion fatigue do to us? What's its impact? We can lose the ability to nurture. We can lose the ability to deal with multiple stressors. We could miss important clinical information, and we can feel emotionally exhausted. I have a couple of colleagues that have stuff going on with their children, and they're trying to focus on, when they're at work, focus on work and try not to have the children issues, overlap with work. And of course, when you're at home, to try to make sure you focus on your family and your children, and leave work at home, leave work in the parking lot, leave work in the car. So who gets it? Compassion fatigue can affect the most dedicated workers, the people who continue to help by working extra shifts, by foregoing days off, and neglecting their own self-care. This can result from exposure to a single case of trauma or from years of accumulated emotional residue. That term, emotional residue, hit me. Just imagine if you've got a piece of fuzz on your shirt, or in my case, a hair on your shirt that you're trying to wipe off. Just think about, how do you wipe off emotional residue? Ugh. So, do I have it? Hang on, I needed to get a drink of water. So there are several formal assessments for compassion fatigue. They're all online. There's one, the Professional Quality of Life Scale. There's a Compassion Fatigue Satisfaction Self-Test, and the Secondary Trauma Self-Efficacy Scale. These are all very long, very thorough tests. And the first one, when I looked at it, I felt like I was going through a continuing education class. There was so much into it. So yes, if you want to go through the assessment, like I said, they're online, and you can get them when the slides are posted to the website. But I personally, Teresa's opinion, I don't think you need it. Look at yourself. Look at the symptoms. You tell yourself, or let your gut tell you if you have it. So we're going to look at the symptoms again. Are you exhausted? Are you emotionally disconnected? Can you sleep? Do you hate yourself? Are your personal relationships messed up? Are you anxious? Are you afraid? Are you getting headaches? Is your stomach upset? Are you depressed? Are you numb? Are you irritable? Are you trying to figure out, why the hell am I still doing this work? Think about it. If you're showing the symptoms, you most likely are fatigued. Also, look at your behaviors. Are you self-medicating with alcohol, drugs, food, or gambling? Are you working long hours, taking work home, taking calls off hours? Do you pass out as soon as you get home from work, or binge watch TV because you physically can't do anything else? And is depression or anxiety taking over your life? Are you depressed about work? Are you depressed about things at home? And there's also compassion fatigue in the general public. When I read about this, I thought about my sister. My sister is one of these people. She's not a helping professional. She's retired, but she's acutely aware of societal needs, and she feels helpless to solve them. So she actively engages in charity or volunteering, and she feels she cannot commit any more time, energy, or money to the plight of others because they feel overwhelmed or paralyzed by pleas for support, and that the world's challenges are never ending. My sister's the oldest in our family, And for a while when we were growing up, our mother was ill, so she took care of us when we were children. And then as my mother did age, my sister was the primary caregiver. And my mother has passed away since then. So now my sister is the primary caregiver for her mother-in-law. She also volunteers at her church. She's a communion minister. She runs the church's food pantry. She runs the church's craft shows. She crochets baby hats and coordinates getting them to the hospital. My sister just does too much, and I'm afraid that she is going to end up being fatigued. So what can I do about it? I like this little guy. I'm going to watch him for a minute. Okay, so prevention is the best medicine. I'm sorry, somebody just sang outside of my office, so I apologize if you heard that. You need to practice self-care. My sister, again, she does take care of her mother-in-law, but there's also a hired caregiver. So she told me a couple of weeks ago, she said, okay, mom's taken care of, I'm going to run away. So what she calls running away is she goes to those gigantic indoor-outdoor flea markets in Pennsylvania that she loves. She went by herself. If I go to one of those things, that would cause me stress and anxiety. That's not my thing. But she was practicing self-care. She was getting away. So also you need to set boundaries. You need to develop psychic numbing, which we'll talk about later. And you need to develop compassion resilience, which we will also talk about later. Because we got to talk more about self-care. Excuse me. You need to exercise. You need to eat well. You need to get adequate sleep and rest, and you need regular time off. Not just Monday, not just Saturday and Sunday, vacations. Time off, time to rest and recharge. Focus, center yourself, be mindful. You need to be the calm in the storm. And you could try moments of silence before meetings or sessions, and after meetings or sessions. I think it's cool that Quakers were mindful before they knew it was a thing. So yes, Quakers were mindful. And then you can do the 3 good things exercise. I'm not sure if anybody has heard of that or who does that. It is something where at the end of the day, you reflect about 3 good things that happened to you. I've used it in counseling sessions. Sometimes I encourage people to journal, keep a 3 good things journal. I actually do it in my house to try to keep up the positivity because my husband and my son like to talk politics. So when I've had enough of that at dinner, I'm like, okay, time to do the 3 good things because I can't do politics. We're going to do positivity. So that's a good exercise, good positive centering exercise. Then you can also do centering breaths, a breath or breaths. So I'd like you all to do this with me. We can do this in 1 breath. We will do this in 1 breath, and then we will do it in 3 breaths to focus on each point. So inhale, breathe in self-compassion, hold it, acknowledge the difficulty that you're going to face or the difficulty your client is having, and then exhale, compassion for the client. So that's 1 breath with a holding in the middle. So we'll do 3 breaths now. Inhale, exhale. That was compassion for yourself, loving yourself. Inhale, exhale, acknowledging the difficulty ahead of you. Inhale, exhale, the compassion for your client. Okay, more mindfulness. You can do yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. I noted Don Fiore. I don't get any financial remunerations for talking about him, but Don Fiore does Tai Chi, Qigong for seniors. I mainly do that because I'll be honest, I can't get off the floor if I try to do yoga. He has videos up. Hold on, my pump is making noise at me, so I will tell it to shut up and be right back. Okay. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. The Don Fiore sessions are between 10 minutes to 30 minutes, and he's very easily accessible on YouTube. And he also has a Prime Video, some Prime Video shows on Amazon Prime. So I'm not getting any money from YouTube, Amazon, or anything like that. You can also use meditation, prayer, chanting. I hate driving in the rain. So when I have the windshield wipers up as fast as they can go, every turn of the wiper, I do Hail Mary, full of grace. So things like that to help meditate, help keep me calm. Massage. Use many, there's so many apps out there. When I was, looking around for things to talk about today, there's so just Google meditation apps and there'll be a ton of them. And then post a positive affirmation or affirmations where you can see it while you're working. In my office, I have the Serenity Prayer and the IT service phone number right next to each other. So sometimes when I need one, I need the other, and when I need the other, just they're interrelated. And then know your triggers for stress, depression, and anxiety. And the example I'm going to give kind of also relates to boundaries, which are coming up. So I work in a retirement community. Our residents here die. We have, depending on 30 and 50 residents a year die, and they have memorial services or funerals. There is a debate amongst the social work profession as to whether or not it's appropriate for social workers to attend the funerals of their clients. It may be seen as showing preferential treatment if you attend a funeral. So my personal boundary with that is I don't attend a funeral unless I am personally invited by the family. So like I mentioned, my mother died a few years ago. And when someone died a few months after my mother died, yes, I was close to the resident. I was close to the resident's spouse, and the spouse invited me to the funeral. And yes, it was the personal invitation, but I declined because it was right after my mother died. And I was afraid that if I attended this public ceremony, yes, I would grieve the resident, but the grief from my mother would also come through. And one, I didn't want to go through with that. I was trying to lessen my grief, go through my grief path, but I was also afraid I was going to lose it in public. And I was not willing to do that in front of other residents, in front of other coworkers. So I had my boundary, and I hope she understood it. I knew I couldn't do it. So boundaries, I love boundaries, love, love, love boundaries. Okay, so boundaries are limits and needs that you express to yourself and others in order to feel safe, healthy, and comfortable. Tips for setting boundaries. And I know I went a little crazy with the highlighter, but I love the boundary setting. So you need to identify the boundary before setting them. I'll just give an example. Say if you have appointments and you want to maintain your schedule, and you tell somebody, if you're more than 10 minutes late for an appointment, you have to reschedule. And then prepare for follow through if the needs aren't met or if the boundary is broken. So if someone comes and they're 15 minutes late, you have to tell them you either have to wait until the end of the day or we have to reschedule. And you have to explain the boundaries calmly and professionally. Don't be like, well, you're late, so I can't see you. Be calm and professional, and do a boundary check-in. This doesn't really relate to the keeping appointments, but in other aspects of therapeutic relationships or even family relationships, you may need to do a boundary check-in and make sure you still need that kind of boundary. So psychic numbing. I know this sounds a little negative there, so I will explain. Psychic numbing is the ability to dial down one's empathetic instincts while on the job. So it frees up cognitive reserves in order to find solutions to the problems in front of them, rather than become paralyzed by the scope of what they see. And I think someone with strong boundaries can do this. So you compartmentalize yourself. So you build a wall around it. So there is a body of work that is negative on psychic numbing. So this is not the psychic numbing definition by Paul Slovic, who defines it as the diminished sensitivity to the value of life and the ability to appreciate loss. No, 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 no. This is where you can be present but stable. And you need to monitor your inner dialogue to make sure that what's going through your head is productive rather than destructive. And then you need to use emotions to motivate and inspire. Okay, now compassion resilience. It's the ability to maintain physical and emotional and mental well-being while responding compassionately to the suffering of others. Compassion resilience. Again, some of this is repetition, but you need to establish boundaries. You need to acknowledge when you have mentally done enough for the day, then stop. You need to tackle the items each day that require the most mental energy instead of putting them off. Sometimes the act of dreading to do something can be more draining than tackling the project from the beginning. So at Broadmead, we talk about eating the frog first thing. Mark Twain, the very brilliant Mark Twain, says, identify your most difficult task of the day and complete it before you do any other work. So thank you that this is the first thing in my day. So, and it, this is great, but yes, hopefully this is the most difficult task of my day. So more compassion resilience. There are many resources and training to increase resilience and mindfulness. But again, there are many, not all will meet your needs. There's someone that there's more Eastern religion, more yoga, more. I took a class where there was a lady that, instead of her moment of silence, she rings 3 bells. I mean, that meets her needs. It didn't meet my needs. It might not meet your needs. So you have to do a web search to see what's out there. There's also a lot of books and ebooks. And again, PESI, that is a company that does continuing education credits for lots of professionals, and they offer a lot on compassion fatigue. And again, I received no financial remuneration for mentioning PESI. So please consult your doctor for help with physical symptoms, such as increased weight, increased blood pressure, Seek mental health counseling for coping strategies, exploration of boundaries, and addressing anxiety, depression, and vicarious trauma. Seek help from both disciplines if addiction developed as an adverse coping strategy. And please, if you are struggling, don't put on a brave face and pretend nothing is going on. Take a mental pause. And if you see a friend or colleague that you think is suffering, reach out. Remember the bear in the cartoon, be the bear. So we do this work because we have compassion for others. We need to make sure the compassion starts with ourselves. We must ensure that we take care of ourselves first to avoid compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue can happen to the best of us. There are strategies to address it: self-care, setting boundaries, psychic numbing, and compassion resilience. Thank you. Let's end with a moment of silence. Okay, I do have my references. I need to update them, and then I will get them to Sarah, and then I will stop sharing. Okay. All right, I'm welcome to questions, and because I'm sorry it didn't take a full hour, so ask away.
No, Teresa, that's great. Thank you so much. I loved your presentation. Thank you for the video that you showed from Dr. Brené Brown. There is one question in the chat, and then, yeah, of course, would welcome more questions in the chat. Also feel free to unmute and ask questions as well. But Tiffany has asked, can compassion fatigue also lead to feelings of resentment?
Absolutely.
Yes. So can you talk a little bit about resentment and how our compassion fatigue can then lead into resentment, and how can we tell the difference?
It's kind of like in the video, the what if, or the, why, how come you get this you get this attention and I don't? Or how come you get more attention than others? Again, it's a gut feeling. It's maybe even some jealousy. So you feel that the other person is not deserving of your attention or of others' attention, and you resent that others are giving the attention. And again, you need to focus yourself. Is the person deserving of other people's attention? Is the person having a really bad time and just having trouble expressing it? So yes, definitely can lead to resentment.
Awesome. Yeah. And I love that you brought up boundaries. I think that's an important piece of this conversation for sure. And so with that, it can be difficult not to offend or hurt people when trying to set them. So any recommendation on how to navigate this?
Talk through it. If you set a boundary and the person is like, I'm uncomfortable with that, ask why. I'm like, we need to have this line in the sand. And again, maybe the boundary could be that person's trigger, but ask probing questions. Ask the person to give them, tell you why that boundary is uncomfortable, because we have to have boundaries. And, say, if this hurts your feelings, I'm sorry, we need to continue, we need to work on. If you can't meet this boundary, then maybe you and I aren't a good match. Maybe you can't work with me. So.
I think working together as a team within our departments, within our coworkers around us, is really crucial, because we cannot just, drop them, but we can refer them to someone else who may be a better fit to help them at that time or to serve them in some way.
And I just see somebody in the chat put a book about boundaries. Yay.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison. Also say from the video, there was one thought that I had, and I wrote it down in big letters, compassion versus fixing the problem.
Right.
And I think I often, for myself personally, when I'm experiencing compassion fatigue, it's because I'm trying to fix everyone's problems. I'm a fixer. And so I'm trying to fix everybody's problems, and I'm trying to fix it on my own by myself. And so I love that was kind of mentioned in the video, and Brené Brown talked about just saying, I'm sorry this has happened to you. Thank you so much for telling me. And then we can stop there. But for us that are in roles where we do need to help residents through a problem, or staff through a problem, how do we best navigate through that?
One, I want to say that I did have a personal experience with a client that she waved me over and she said, I just need you to know that everybody who comes to see me is because I pay them. Everybody that I care about, I buried. I whoa. And I said to her, I don't know what to say. She said, you just sit with me. So, we said, of course, I made sure she had all her stuff, all her advance directives, funeral home, all that stuff together. But just sit with them, take a pause with your staff members, sit and reflect. Yes, I know you still need to roll through and solve the problem, but just some reflection, feel your feelings. One of the books that helped me get through COVID was called Riding the Dragon. I will put that in as a reference as well. I'm kind of surprised I didn't mention it in my slideshow, but feel your feelings, acknowledge this is hard, this sucks. And then put in your box and roll away.
Yeah, you talked about avoiding tasks or even avoiding feelings, man, that can burn us out, I think, quicker than anything is just the avoidance of it. Whether they're, again, those tasks or those feelings. Let me see here. Yeah, Joanne, do you want to unmute and talk more about that? That's a great point. Yeah, silence can also be helpful when establishing your boundaries. That is, you don't have to say too much, as you said. Simply say what your boundaries are without over explaining.
Hi, thanks. I'm a colleague of Teresa here at Broadmead. And so as I was thinking about our practice of moments of silence, how it sort of meshes in with this talk about establishing our boundaries. And I'm thinking about my own experience of, setting visiting times and things like that. And that I simply say, this is what they are. If we need to make another arrangement, we can do that. And that's kind of it. And if people have things that they want to say, they will, but eventually they'll say what they need to. And I guess my point was really just that we don't need to over explain that need for ourselves.
Mhm.
That's a great reminder. Really great reminder.
And sometimes I have to tell people, I just need a moment to process that because they think that I'm not paying attention or they think that I'm going somewhere, but I just say, hold on, I need a moment. So usually
Yeah,
that's to my husband, but sometimes it's to clients.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder because the pace in which we are oftentimes required to work is exhausting, and we need to take those moments of silence. We need to be honest and say, I need a minute to process that. Can I get back to you tomorrow or by the end of the day or in an hour? Give yourself that permission to slow down and take that time. It is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. As we serve our residents and as we work with the staff to serve them as well. Any other questions, comments, things to share, stories to share? Would love to hear from anybody else joining us today.
There's also maybe another time I can do, there's some information out there on compassionate fatigue and compassionate workplaces and compassion resilient workplaces and toxic workplaces. But that, I could have, I didn't mention that because I wanted to focus more on the individual, but there are also, compassion fatigued workplaces. The whole building, the whole organization is compassion fatigued.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Anna is saying that you have a good trauma-informed care presentation as well. So definitely keep that in mind. Very much linked.
Yes.
Anything else? Yes, Teresa, I echo what Allison has said and what many people have said here in the chat. Thank you so much for this presentation. I know that it will be a great resource for people to go back and watch. Put it on your calendar that in 2023 on July 20th, you rewatch this recording and video and look over through the slides as a reminder to yourself that compassion fatigue can happen to all of us, but there are steps that we can take to mitigate them and steps that we can take once it has happened to get back to a healthier self. So Teresa, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of the day. I hope you have a great rest of your summer and you do get some time off to rest and to recharge, to maybe kind of align some of those boundaries that have gone a little bit out of whack. I do want to mention what our next session is going to be for housing happenings. I'm really excited about the month of August. I hope that all of you will join us and you will invite your colleagues to join us as well. Our topic is another hot topic that's come up that has been requested we discuss within this group, and it's older adults with substance abuse. I am very excited about and honored that she is going to come and speak to us. Her name is Susan Lehman, and she is at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. So really excited that she's going to be joining us. She has requested that if anybody is going to attend, to send in questions ahead of time. Certainly she'll answer your questions during the presentation, but if you have questions or comments or stories, experiences to share around serving older adults that have had substance abuse, please feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email address in the chat just to make sure everybody has it. I would love to send that feedback, those questions, comments over to Susan prior to our time together next month. Again, that's going to be on August the 17th. So our third Wednesday of every month, we have housing happening. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Again, please feel free to email me with questions, comments, and experiences that you have. And then with that, I hope that everyone has a great rest of the day, and we'll see you again next month.